Okay. Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Casual Conversations, now with a new guest, the first guest that's not Haider. This is Yahya. Yahya, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. My name is Yahya Qasim, and I'm a friend of Mshary. We've met through Coded program. Mshary was one of the instructors at Coded, and that was, I think, in 2018, right?
I think so. So 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yes.
Mm.
I work at KOC, Kuwait Oil Company, and in project management team. I also have a couple of projects on the side, like an online platform for tailoring. It's called Shop Razza. And we also have coffee products called the Boro Coffee Company. This is what I do.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what else to say.
No, that's fine. So this is interesting. This is the topic that we've had in mind to start with is success and failure. So it's interesting you have all of these side projects and you're a project manager at a company, and yeah, it's going to be cool. So okay, what does people talk about generally success and failure? People want to be successful, people don't want to fail, but at the same time, people tell them it's okay to fail. You know the whole dynamic that people have. So what does success and failure mean to you?
I think it's very subjective. It depends on the person's or the individual's goal in life, and there is no one definition for success or one definition for failure. I think it's very subjective. So some people might want to achieve certain things. Maybe they're related to the career that they picked, or something else. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's pursuing some type of sports. You know, I think it's very subjective, and also it's not necessary to reach the end goal that you had in mind initially. Maybe you wanted to build a certain business, and you wanted to reach a certain level in that business. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to reach that end goal. Maybe midway you would realize that it's not right for you and you could pivot into something else. And you would still gain valuable lessons and experiences because you took the first step. At least this is how I view it. I think you just have to follow your interest at the time, and then those interests will change in the future, and you will have to pivot and keep walking in a path that makes sense to you. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you view success and failure, Shari?
Well, the way I view it is similar to what you said, in that it's not objective, it's something subjective. So I think the way I would put it also is that it's not something that you get from the outside. It's not something that's kind of imposed onto you. It's something you decide internally, and it's kind of like what determines whether or not you're successful at something isn't any objective metric on the outside unless you decide. It's something you feel on the inside. You feel like you did what you wanted to do. But I think so. I don't know how prevalent this is now, but in the past, at least, not a very distant past, most people believe that success is something objective. It's either money or a certain job or some status or some success in some area of life. But over time, people started to see more and more clearly that that's not a good definition of success, because living by it, while you end up unhappy and very miserable, it became clear that that's not how we should live our lives. And now a lot more people are starting to see that success is something that comes from within. So yeah, I think we quickly agreed on that.
I think there is still more to it. Like, for example, I remember maybe we've discussed this before. When it comes to a project, let's say a construction project, we can measure success by looking at three things: time spent to complete that project, the money spent to complete that project, whether it exceeded the budget or not, and the scope of work achieved. So first, like you set a certain timeline for the project to be completed and a certain budget to complete that project and to build or to meet the objective, the scope of work to complete it.
Mhm.
So by looking at these three different elements, you can define whether the project succeeded or not.
Interesting.
But can you use the same elements to measure success in things related to your personal life?
Interesting.
That's a question.
It's a good question. So I like what you put is, and you're kind of saying, Mani, that, I mean, what I got out of it is that success, it's not something that just sits up in the air by itself. Like, it's bounded in conditions. And these conditions, this is what I wanted to do, bounded by these restraints. Did I achieve the objective, the goal that we stated in the beginning or not, which includes the restraints of the time, the resources, and the scope of the work. But the general talk that people have, this person is successful, this person is a failure, is they're thinking that success is something you achieve in your in life, but in reality, success is it's bounded in a small part of your life. Like, did you succeed at completing this task in this amount of time? This is where success or failure exists. But the problem that people tend to end up having is, I'm a success or I'm a failure. This person's a success. They tend to make it into a label that they put onto a person, and they want the success label, not the failure label. That's where things start to get muddy and kind of messed up. But where success or failure kind of should start to go is, you can start to say that, for example, you want to do something in your life, you can break it down into smaller steps, and you can say, in that step, did you succeed or fail at achieving that small step?
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah. So, like, for example, someone wants to be an entrepreneur. By the nature of building startups, it's very chaotic. It's very kind of random. It's unpredictable, and so it doesn't really fit when you say, I'm a successful entrepreneur or I'm a failed entrepreneur. What you could better say is, as an entrepreneur, I attempted this. I attempted to test this idea in the market, and testing the idea was a success, even if the idea itself failed in the market. And so you can't, the problem is when you say to yourself, I want to be a success. That's a goal you'll never attain. It's a goal that you'll never actually attain.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think you've put it in a very good way. In the same example that you just made. So if someone creates an idea and he wants to test it in the market, as you said, that's why you create an MVP product, for example. You want to test whether the idea works or not. Maybe it works for a certain market, for certain people, for in a certain time. Maybe you can do everything very well, the system that you create and the procedures that you do, you can do them extremely well, but it doesn't have to work in the market. Maybe the market wouldn't react to it. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. you will probably pick up a lot of useful skills along the way, and then you can use those skills into doing a different business or into pursuing a different project. So if the idea doesn't work, or if the market doesn't react well to your initial idea, can you call the whole experience a failure? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I think there is much more to it than the results, or like it's not just one thing that you can look at and say this is failure or this is successful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I completely agree here. So, um, in this conversation, I kind of realized something that, um, well, I see the question, I think the better question that people can ask themselves, and I try to ask myself that question instead of a different question, is, well, what is the thing that I'm actually trying to do? In the example of testing an idea in the market as an entrepreneur, is what you're trying to do make this idea work in the market? Because that's not really in your control. It depends on what the market needs. So is what you're trying to do, see if that's what the market wants? I mean, to actually test the idea. And if that's what you want, that's what you're trying, if that's what you're aiming at, then regardless of whether or not the market wants this product, just the fact that you tested it and saw whether or not the market wants it, that's called a success. Even if you end up learning that the market doesn't like the product and they want something completely different and you have to start over from scratch, it's still a success because you aimed at testing it. Now, in a broader sense, I would say, to the people who are like trying to be a success in life, I don't know how many of them are left by this point, honestly, but to the people who are trying to be a success in life and have this idea of someone who has like a rich car, a really expensive suit, lives in a giant mansion with servants and a colossal garden outside the house, and has mountains of cash just lying around. um, a better aim to have is, I mean, I was trying to get at a certain thing and I kind of lost my words. So let me start over here. If instead you decide that what you want to do in life is to live by your rules, or not exactly, but to follow your heart, something that's kind of flexible and that you don't like determine in advance what your heart will want in 10 years, so you give yourself the flexibility to change. If your goal, if your aim to follow your heart is to follow your heart, then no matter what success or failure happens on the outside, you are a success on the inside because you successfully followed your heart wherever that takes you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think when you give like a contrast example, for example, a successful CEO of a big organization, he's making a lot of money and he's contributing to a bigger market, for example. And when you compare him to a Buddhist, for example, you might find that the Buddhist is more happy than the CEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
He might be living a very peaceful and fulfilling life. He's happy and he might see himself succeeding in pursuing his life purpose, for example. But he's living in a completely different lifestyle than the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think this contrasted example shows that it's very subjective. يعني, I think as society we've been influenced by capitalism in a way that we started to associate material, like owning material and owning money, having wealth, you know, with success. We feel like if you don't have money, then you're not successful. If you can't afford certain things, then you're not successful. And that's not true at all. You know, having wealth doesn't mean you're happier, doesn't mean that you're at peace, doesn't mean that you're enjoying your life. I think it's just media, marketing certain things to the public, and we consume media a lot throughout the day. And we also like get influenced by people. If that's the mainstream idea of success, then we will probably adopt the same mentality.
Wow.
I think, yeah, I think it helps if we take a step back and then contemplate things, reflect on our personal subjective goals rather than, just follow the herd. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is really cool. So while you were talking, like in my head, I decided I'm gonna go in this direction, and then you went in the exact same uh, direction yourself. Um, this kind of made me kind of come to the place in my head where, and this is the story that we're often told in movies, on the internet, and every product that, like everybody who uses an iPhone looks at it as this is the product of success, and the person who created it succeeded in business, succeeded with money, succeeded in marketing, and created a consumer product. That's kind of where success lies. That's kind of where this sense of completion lies. But then you went in the direction of not following the herd. So that's the story that we're often told. So we, by default, if we don't, what's the word? If we don't examine ourselves, our default sense of success is business and money and fame, which is, of course, natural that that's what we think. It's a perfectly natural conclusion to arrive at, especially in our capitalistic world. That's really like full of material wealth and abundance. Um, but but if you just adopt that default sense of success, you'll be stuck trying to achieve a success that you can't achieve, because it's not that you can't, it's that you very, very likely won't, because it's dependent on factors that are not in your control. That's why you can't guarantee it. That's why you can't make it happen. It either happens to you or it doesn't happen at all. And most of the time, to most people, it just doesn't happen. Um, and I think someone of the Greek people said, like the Greek philosophers said something like, an unexamined life is a life not worth living. It might have been someone not from Greece. I can't remember honestly, but it's a quote that's stuck in my head. Um, and so my advice to someone who's trying to arrive at success and is frustrated by that is to kind of slow down and ask yourself, try to figure out what do you want from success exactly? Like, what does that mean to you? What do you want out of it that you don't already have? And then try to find another way that's more in your control to get the same thing that you want. If what you want out of success, if what you want out of success is to be famous, is to get attention, then maybe you can get the same fame and attention in a different way that's much more in your control, and you'll feel a lot better because you'll actually get there, you know?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, sometimes we picture ourselves living in a certain way after achieving certain goals, but when you reach that place, you you discover that the things that you imagined or the things that you thought you would get after achieving a certain step is not as great as you thought, and you've spent maybe a long time, you've invested money, time, effort, just because you didn't reflect very well on that goal. So I think what you suggested is very, very good. This is good advice, and we often can change a lot through simple things, through simple measures, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. Interesting. We got to a really nice place, I think. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, I don't know if there's any part of this conversation or this topic that you think people will like wonder about or be curious about, or a question you think people might be asking, or you think there's any part of this that we haven't covered?
Um,
Hmm.
I'm thinking maybe in our society, like how people would define success. I think we've talked about that, right?
Mm. Do you think it's any different in our society than in the West?
I think I think they meet at certain points. It's mainly at the amount of wealth you have, I think,
Interesting. Mm.
and whether you have like a secure source of income,
Mm.
security, money. I think that's success. Usually, it's defined like that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, maybe having certain degrees, like being a doctor or being a lawyer, for example.
Yeah, it seemed to me that here it's much more focused on status than anything else, right?
Social status.
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, you're right.
Mm. The other thing, so this is the part about a conversation like this that's kind of sad about reality that I've seen, is that sometimes I ask myself, why do people think of this as a success? Why do people crave, let's say, social status so much, and they surround their entire, like they make their entire lives about one thing, and that is social status, and they don't think about anything past that. Everything they think about is in relation to social status and how they can use this other thing that they're thinking about to get more social status. Like I ask myself, like, why is this reality? Where is this actually uh, coming from? Is this natural, or is this being forced by some people? And I keep realizing that the like the default story that this is what success is, this is what we should be aiming for, is because if you have that social status, if you have that amount of wealth in the environment you live in, you're actually happier, you're actually much better off. But the misery that's behind that pursuit is that you don't actually attain it so easily. It's not as possible as your other options to get what you really want and what you really need. If you keep chasing after uh, these resources like social status and wealth, um, because of the circumstances you're personally born and because like you specifically are born into, chasing after it unnaturally and very effortfully, you're bound to be stuck in a cycle of misery. Um,
Mm.
it's I don't have like a simple rational explanation for why that usually happens, but that's how it tends to work out. But
Yeah.
it's a perfectly natural desire to chase after those things. It's just that it's better for you to wake up and realize you can get more by going after something else, and realizing you can get the same thing you want in this other pursuit, rather than chasing after status or wealth. You could see that maybe what you want is just to have a close group of friends, or a good marriage, and you can realize that that's actually what's going to give you what you really want, and put your efforts and focus on that, and then you live a much better life, you know.
Yeah. I think I agree, but I think not all people, like most of the people in society, at least in our society, and I think in all societies, they don't stop to reflect. They're very reactive people. They react to events, ideas, things that they've been exposed to. So from the moment they're born, and like when they're very young, they go to school, they mingle with people, socialize, and they absorb ideas, values, things, interests, and they grow up being exposed to those environments, and they don't take a step back to reflect. So they just continue to be reactive to anything that they get exposed to. And again, it's the effect of media and friends, colleagues, family, you know, it's they're being surrounded with all of these different signals, directing them towards certain path, you know, and it's very difficult for them or for people to escape that, you know. And those who are lucky enough to actually take a step back to see how reality looks like and to be able to take a conscious decision in changing their path, I think they're very lucky. Not all people have that, I think, luxury to be able to have the time and to be in a situation where they can be aware of their surroundings. If you're that lucky, I think you should make you should pivot and make a difference. You have to select something that works for you and escape the path that the rest are walking.
Yeah, this is kind of why I think people, the average person at least, is better off practicing or spending at least some of their resources and time and energy practicing self-awareness and in any way that makes sense to them and that works for them. And I think gaining that awareness and the ability to choose where they go, they're much better off than kind of, again, going with the default mode of whatever story they already believe, you know?
Yes, I agree.
Interesting. Okay, I think we landed at a good spot. I think it's been about 25 minutes now. So yeah, that was really, really, really fast. It went by really fast. It feels like we
Not
just
like
got
5
started.
minutes. Yeah.
Exactly, I feel the same way, exactly. That's really cool. All right. I think we'll wrap it up here. It's been great talking to you and having you on the podcast, Yahya.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mshary.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. And inshallah, we'll do it again sometime, maybe.
Inshallah.
All right. All right.
All right.
I'll see you guys later.